Can 46 seconds really be enough to shake the perceptions of millions of ARMY worldwide? Or does it instead peel back layers of meaning long hidden behind camera angles, algorithms, and an intimacy never meant for the public eye? That question exploded at the same moment a short clip began spreading wildly, flowing from one timeline to another, slipping into closed chat rooms, then detonating in open discussions with an intensity that felt almost irrational. Just 46 seconds. No more. Yet those seconds ignited layered reactions: shock, tenderness, suspicion, being deeply moved, even skepticism, that made countless people pause, stare at their screens again, and ask, is this merely a coincidence or something far deeper? The video shows Jungkook and Taehyung on a bunk bed. Dim lighting, sleepy expressions, an atmosphere that doesn't feel staged. One of them hugs the other from behind, a hand gently stroking hair, followed by a brief kiss on an arm or upper part of the body. There is no dramatic dialogue, no manufactured background music, only a warm silence that feels honest. And it is precisely there that the explosion of meaning occurs. Why did this seemingly simple moment shake people so deeply? Why were ARMY reactions so massive and varied? Why did 46 seconds feel like a long, unspoken statement? In media and popular culture studies, there is a concept known as observed intimacy. Intimacy that becomes powerful not because it is announced, but because it is accidentally witnessed. This video, according to many observers, sits squarely in that territory. It is not a stage performance, not clearly framed fan service, nor is it an officially prepared narrative. It appears like a fragment of life that leaked into the public sphere. And leaks, in the world of celebrities, always invite interpretation. ARMY who watched the clip over and over began noticing small details usually overlooked. The way the hand moved slowly, not just brushing past. The way the body responded, not stiff or awkward. The sleepy expressions that actually heighten the sense of authenticity, as if the moment occurred in the middle of exhaustion only they could understand. This is where the first question emerged, academic yet emotional in tone. If this was just a coincidence, why did it feel so natural? If it was just an ordinary moment, why was its impact extraordinary? Some fans tried to calm the discourse with rational arguments. They referenced Korean culture, where skinship among close friends is common. They reminded others that bunk beds and sleepy environments often lead to spontaneous gestures that don't need excessive interpretation. But counterarguments arose just as strongly. Isn't spontaneity exactly what makes it significant? Aren't unplanned moments often more honest than those carefully constructed? At this point, the narrative became layered. Some saw it as a symbol of a mature friendship, a body language born from deep trust. Others interpreted it as emotional protection amid the crushing pressure of the industry. Still others read the clip as a fragment of a relationship that cannot be easily defined by simple labels. And of course, there were those who chose to keep asking questions rather than drawing conclusions, because in this case, questions felt safer than answers. What's fascinating is that the video does not stand alone. It appears within a long history of Jungkook and Taehyung interactions documented over the years. Glances caught on camera, quiet laughter backstage, silences that felt full of meaning. All those archives now seem to find a new puzzle piece. Was this 46-second clip the key? Or merely an illusion of connection created by the human brain's tendency to seek patterns? From a media psychology perspective, this phenomenon can be explained through parasocial attachment theory. Fans feel an emotional bond with public figures, so even the smallest gestures are read with heightened intensity. But this theory alone doesn't fully explain the massive reaction. There is another factor. Collective exhaustion with overly controlled narratives, a thirst for moments that feel real, and a human need to find warmth in a world that increasingly feels cold. For some ARMY, this video became an emotional oasis. Amid packed schedules, industry pressure, and unbridgeable physical distance, those 46 seconds offered something rare: calm. A hug from behind, a gentle stroke of hair, a brief kiss. Everything spoke of comfort, not sensation. And precisely because of that, it became sensational, but sensation always carries risk. When a private moment becomes public consumption, the boundary between appreciation and intrusion blurs. Critical voices began to emerge, questioning the ethics of spreading the clip. Are we celebrating intimacy or exploiting it? Does our emotional reaction ignore their right to privacy as human beings? These questions are not easy to answer. The modern entertainment industry thrives on paradox. The public craves closeness, yet that closeness often demands the sacrifice of privacy. Jungkook and Taehyung, like many idols, live at that intersection. Every gesture can become news. Every second can go viral. And every instance of virality carries a burden of interpretation that is not always fair. Interestingly, no official clarification appeared.
No denial, no explanation.
This silence, for some, only deepened the mystery. In communication theory, silence is often louder than words. Is this silence strategic? Or simply a choice not to respond to something deemed trivial? Once again, questions linger, and interpretive space remains wide open. As time passed, the discourse shifted from what happened to why are we so affected? ARMY began reflecting on their own reactions. Why could a single clip trigger emotions this deep? Why did a simple hug feel like a major event? The answers were often personal. For some, it was about the representation of warmth they rarely experience. For others, it was about validation that emotional intimacy still exists in a fast, fragmented world. Here lies the true power of those 46 seconds. It wasn't just a video. It became a mirror. Each person saw a different reflection, shaped by their own experiences and emotional needs. And perhaps that is precisely why it was so shaking. Not because of what Jungkook and Taehyung did, but because of what viewers felt. Yet the surprise didn't stop there. Analysis after analysis surfaced, slowing down every frame, magnifying every movement. Some pointed to the camera angle, questioning how the clip was even recorded. Others read body language through a semiotic lens, interpreting touch as a sign of closeness beyond habit. Still others reminded that the human body has its own language that doesn't always align with conscious intent. All these arguments intertwined, creating a complex landscape of discussion. Amid the noise, one thing became clear. These 46 seconds had transcended entertainment. They became material for cultural, psychological, and ethical inquiry. They forced us to question boundaries, meaning, and responsibility, both as fans and as media consumers. Will we ever know the true meaning of that hug? Perhaps not. And perhaps we don't need to. Because sometimes, mystery is more honest than false certainty. What remains is the awareness that behind the spotlight and the stage, there are human beings who are tired, sleepy, and seeking comfort. And when that moment was caught on camera, the world reacted. In the end, this viral 46-second clip leaves us with one lingering question that refuses to fade. Were we witnessing an overblown coincidence or a fragment of intimacy accidentally revealed? The answer may differ for everyone. But one thing is undeniable. In those 46 seconds, Jungkook and Taehyung, knowingly or not, reminded millions of people of the quiet power of a simple hug. As the conversation continued to ripple outward, another layer quietly emerged, one that went beyond interpretation and stepped into the realm of collective memory. Many longtime followers began recalling older moments that, at the time, seemed insignificant, even forgettable. Clips once dismissed as playful teasing or casual closeness were suddenly revisited with renewed attention. The past, reframed by the present, took on new resonance. This is how narratives evolve in fandom culture, not linearly, but retrospectively, where a single new image can rewrite the emotional meaning of years' worth of archived footage. What made this particular moment different, many argued, was not just the physical closeness, but the emotional atmosphere surrounding it. The lack of performance energy stood out. There was no exaggerated reaction, no awareness of an audience, no sign of self-consciousness. The movements were slow, almost instinctive, shaped by fatigue rather than intention. In academic terms, such moments are often described as low performativity interactions, instances where individuals are least guarded because they are physically and mentally depleted. Ironically, these are the moments audiences tend to trust the most. Trust became a recurring word in discussions. Trust between two people sharing a confined space. Trust in allowing vulnerability to exist without explanation. Trust that a quiet moment does not need to be justified. For many viewers, this trust was what felt most striking. It suggested a level of emotional safety that is rarely visible in a profession built on constant self-monitoring. In an industry where every expression is scrutinized, the absence of control itself became the message. Yet even as emotions swelled, so did caution. Some voices warned against romanticizing or oversymbolizing a moment that, at its core, could simply be human comfort. They reminded others that the desire to assign meaning often says more about the observer than the observed. This tension between interpretation and projection sat at the heart of the discourse. Was the clip revealing something hidden, or was it acting as a blank canvas onto which millions poured their own longings, loneliness, and hopes? Sociologists have long argued that fandoms function as emotional communities, places where people collectively process feelings that may not find space elsewhere. In that sense, the 46-second video became less about Jungkook and Taehyung as individuals and more about what they symbolized in that instant. They represented rest in a culture obsessed with productivity, softness in an environment that rewards endurance, and closeness in a world that often feels isolating. The bunk bed, cramped and unglamorous, stood in stark contrast to the polished stages fans were accustomed to seeing. And that contrast mattered. The setting itself invited interpretation. A bunk bed is not a place of spectacle. It is functional, temporary, almost childlike in its simplicity. It evokes dorms, training days, shared exhaustion, and the early chapters of long journeys. For some army, that image carried a sense of nostalgia, a reminder of beginnings before fame reshaped everything. The embrace, then, was not just between two people, but between past and present, between who they were and who they have become. Emotionally, the clip arrived at a moment when many fans were already feeling sensitive to themes of separation, distance, and uncertainty. Timing and media impact is often as important as content. Had this video surfaced in a different context, it might have passed quietly. Instead, it landed like a spark on dry ground. The collective mood amplified its effect, transforming a private gesture into a shared emotional event. As days passed, the intensity did not immediately fade. Instead, it evolved. Initial shock gave way to quieter reflection. Some fans began speaking less about what the moment meant and more about how it made them feel. Comforted.
Calm.
Emotional without knowing why. That shift marked an important turning point. The clip no longer needed explanation to justify its impact. Its value existed in sensation rather than conclusion. In the end, perhaps the most surprising element of the viral 46 seconds was not the hug, the touch, or the kiss, but the collective pause it created. In a fast-moving digital landscape, where attention is fleeting and outrage cycles are short, this moment lingered. It invited people to slow down, to sit with ambiguity, to accept that not everything needs to be labeled or resolved, and so the question remains open, not as a problem to be solved, but as a space to reflect. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was routine. Maybe it was something deeply personal that slipped into public view. Or maybe it was simply a reminder that beneath the layers of fame, expectation, and interpretation, there are still quiet human moments that resist definition. Moments that, even at just 46 seconds long, can echo far longer than anyone expects. As the echo of those 46 seconds continued to stretch across timelines and conversations, another subtle shift occurred, one that moved the discussion away from speculation and toward introspection. People began asking not only what they had seen, but why they needed to see it. Why did a moment of tenderness between two individuals spark such an intense emotional response in strangers scattered across the globe? What hunger did it touch? And what silence did it fill? In many ways, the answer lay in contrast. The modern image of idols is built on precision, strength, and emotional discipline. They are trained to perform certainty even when uncertainty surrounds them. Against that backdrop, the softness of the bunk bed scene felt almost radical. It disrupted the expected narrative. There was no armor in that moment, no sharp edges, only exhaustion and care coexisting in the same quiet frame. That contradiction made it unforgettable. Media theorists often describe such moments as emotional dissonance events, instances where what is shown clashes with what audiences are conditioned to expect. When dissonance occurs, attention deepens. The mind lingers. Meaning multiplies. That is precisely what happened here. The clip refused to fit neatly into pre-existing categories, and so it stayed with people, demanding reflection rather than offering closure. Another element that intensified the reaction was the absence of context. There was no explanation of when or why the moment happened. No caption to guide interpretation. No official framing. In a digital world where meaning is often prepackaged, this lack of narrative guidance was unusual. It forced viewers to sit with uncertainty, and uncertainty, by nature, invites emotional projection. The video became a space where imagination and memory intersected. For some, the embrace symbolized trust built over years of shared struggle. For others, it represented a form of emotional language rarely shown between men in mainstream media without irony or distance. The tenderness was not exaggerated or framed as spectacle. It simply existed. And that quiet existence challenged long-standing assumptions about how closeness is allowed to appear in public spaces. Cultural context also played a role. In societies where emotional restraint is often praised, especially among public figures, visible gentleness can feel both comforting and disruptive. The clip did not shout its message. It whispered, and whispers, paradoxically, often travel farther than noise. They invite people to lean in, to listen more closely, to fill the silence with their own understanding. As discussions deepened, some fans began expressing concern not about the moment itself, but about the weight placed upon it. They worried that excessive scrutiny could transform something genuine into something burdensome. This concern reflected a growing awareness within fandom culture about the cost of constant observation. Loving an artist, they argued, should not mean dissecting every private breath. There was a growing call for balance between appreciation and restraint, curiosity and respect. Yet even within that caution, gratitude remained. Many expressed that the clip had reminded them why they connected with these artists in the first place. Not because of perfection, but because of humanity. Not because of spectacle, but because of sincerity. In a strange way, the controversy stripped away layers of image and returned the focus to something simple and deeply human, the need for comfort. Time continued to pass, and like most viral moments, the clip slowly receded from the center of attention. New topics emerged, new discussions replaced old ones. But unlike fleeting scandals or